everyone. Welcome to the first edition, or this year's first edition of Cyclone InCYders. I'm Logan Marada, and alongside I have my co-hosts Hawn, Wong, and Taylor Mankle. And for those of you that have never seen InCYders before, this is our sports show. It's kind of like Around the Horn if you watch ESPN, but instead of Tony Reale, we have Taylor Mankle.
Trying to keep it up.
It's football season, guys. We're excited. We love our football here at Iowa State.
Win or lose.
Win or lose, that's right. And, you know, I did enter this season more optimistic. Our offense has some good weapons, and the defense, I like the JUCO transfers. I went to the spring game. I liked what I saw. But right now we're sitting at 1-2. We did win our first game and got over that proverbial hump of losing to FCS teams, and we beat UNI in a statement game. Then next week after, we lost to Iowa in a game where I felt like we controlled the first half and then kind of blew it in the second. And then most recently, we lost to Toledo late in double overtime. And in that game, ISU, they outgained Toledo in total offense and dominated time and possession in just about every other statistical category. So we'll start with Taylor. What do you think led to the loss in this Toledo game?
I'll tell you exactly what led to the loss there, Logan. It was just the mistakes that were made by Iowa State. Starting off with the penalties. Shooting themselves in the foot was a huge, huge part to this loss. They had 14 penalties for an accumulative 113 yards. That's ridiculous. You can't do that. And another part that really went into that game was they did not pass enough. Even though they passed for 274 yards in this game, Sam Richardson should have gone for about 350 in this one. Toledo was coming off a game against Arkansas where they won that game, a big upset for them, but they gave up 411 passing yards to Arkansas, a running team, and Iowa State, a passing team, could not get more than 274 yards. It seemed like they got way too excited that they started to get the run going and could not go anywhere from that. It looked like they were shocked that they could get the running game going and then just tried to forget about the passing game.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think, you know, last year we saw Iowa State and Sam Richardson absolutely torch Toledo. I mean, I think he threw, was it a record completions or yards, something like that in that game last year. And I had the same thing. Penalties were a killer for us. And I also had Toledo they capitalized on opportunities. I mean, before halftime, on their first possession, they got a field goal and they started at the 50-yard line. I mean, a bad punt, bad field position for us, led to good field position for them. And then right before halftime, we were driving down the field off of an INT, and then we fumbled the ball in field goal range.
Yeah.
And
Shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, and then we both know the missed field goal at the end. So, yeah, so too many missed opportunities for Iowa State. Hawn, what do you think was the key factor in the loss?
Yeah, like you said, Iowa State outgained Toledo in offense, in time of possession, in almost every statistical category. And like you said, what led to this loss? One thing that leads to both of those outcomes is favorable field position by Toledo. If you look at Toledo's scoring drives and positions that they took, they started at the 50, like you said, hit a field goal. They started at the 2, hit a field goal. They started at the 25. Two occasions towards the end of the game, hit a field goal and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Now, granted, they did have 2 long drives of 90 and 67, both of them going for touchdowns. That's half the points. You take away Toledo's, half those points by giving them, harder field position. Field position that we had to play from. We did have some long drives, which did contribute to our total offense and time of possessions.
Yep.
We had good drives of 78 and 89. But if you take that away from Toledo and give us kind of the same odds, like you said, Taylor, mistakes were one of them. Special teams mistakes, it goes, under the table. You want to talk about offense and defense, how to control the game. Special teams really controls the game based on field position, time of possession, the pace of the game. Mistakes on special teams is a big reason why we lost this game.
Well, you talk about that, Hawn, and going off of it, you said that Toledo started on those in good field position, and yet they still left the door open for Iowa State time and time again by only getting field goals or not finishing a drive.
Yep.
And Iowa State was similar. They couldn't finish a drive. They don't have that killer instinct on offense that gets them into the end zone and gets them the points they need. They're a Big 12 team. Big 12 teams score points on points on points, and Iowa State could barely scrounge 30.
All right, so obviously a disappointing loss. And one, I think I have to note, that you can't necessarily put the blame on Netton at the end for missing that field goal. I think 9 out of 10 times he hits that field goal, we win the game, but that wasn't the case. So let's try to focus on a little bit of positives on this season. And let's talk about the MVPs you guys have so far. On offense, who do you guys think are the MVP, or is your MVP? Let's start with Hawn.
All right, so hear me out here. We're looking at this Iowa State offense for MVP here. Not a lot of names pop out to you. So what I'm going to say here is the offensive MVP for Cyclones is that receiving core. We know about him. We know about Montgomery. We know about Lazard. We know about Bundridge. This group of guys, they've each scored 1 touchdown in our 3 games.
Yep.
It's hard to shut down one of them, and that's kind of a positive for this offense. We're talking, most people know Lazard. Lazard, it's 6'5" receiver coming out of Urbandale, highly touted. We got him a local, homegrown guy. You can try to shut him down, and sometimes you can. The positive for Iowa State in this offense, as to why I'm giving him the MVP, is you can't just shut down one of them. You can't shut down this passing game. As well as shutting down a top receiver, like you can see in other teams.
Yep.
We have 5 receivers that can take it to the house every time, and that's why I'm giving this receiving core the MVP so far in the season.
That's kind of tough, Han, to add a little controversy to the show. I'm going to say the wide receivers have really let me down recently.
Really?
I mean,
Right.
You see Alan Lazard, he's running his routes, he's running them well, but he's triple covered every game, it seems like. In these last 2 contests, especially the second half of Iowa and the whole game against Toledo, shut down Alan Lazard. He was running his routes very well, but they had 2-3 guys on him every single play. Where's Bundridge in those last 2 games? Where's Montgomery in those last 2 games? We saw Juwan Wesley at Iowa, but where are the 2 other big names? Bundridge just killed it 2 years ago at Iowa. He was almost insignificant except that 1 touchdown pass for him in the end zone from Sam Richardson in that Iowa game, and he was still non-existent in Toledo. Those big-time receivers need to step up for me, but I'm just trying to add a little something.
I do want to put, through the last 3 games last year of Iowa State's season, we put up 540 passing yards, which is respectable. But this year we put up 750.
Right.
And give or take, Sam Richardson, he's matured. He's a 5th-year senior. I still see a lot of hesitation in him. I still see a lot of mistakes. That's why I like this receiving core to kind of back him up. We've seen some great catches by these guys. Especially Wesley and Daly. You don't hear those guys because we're talking about the big receivers. We love our big receivers. Bundridge, Montgomery, and Lazard are above 6'1" each. But Wesley and Daly, they're quick. They're elusive.
Slot receivers.
Slot receivers. Weapons that Iowa State definitely loves to use in this spread out offense.
Yes, and it's hard for me not to give the offensive MVP to anybody but a receiver or Richardson for that matter, because the main firepower of our offense has been the passing game, and we did see a little bit of the running game kind of develop in that Toledo game, and I agree. I have Lazard, and I would make the case also for the entire receiving core for that matter, because they've all, I want to say like 5 or 6 different receivers have touchdowns on the season. So let's jump to defensive side. The defense has really impressed me this season. Just big growth, completely different defense than that was on the field from last year. And I'm going to start with my defensive MVP, and I have a couple names on here. I'm going to start with Dale Pearson. The first 2 games, lights out. He had 5 sacks, led the NCAA, 6 tackles for a loss total, and an interception. He did come back to earth in the Toledo game. Only 3 tackles. But otherwise, the other 2 names I'd throw in there, Kamari Cotton-Moya, the team's leading tackler. Just a beast, as always. And then a surprising one, Brian Peavy. He's a guy that I think has really stepped up this season, been all over the secondary. He has 5 pass breakups, 6 deflections, an interception, and a forced fumble. And I think that's kind of been key this season because we haven't seen the secondary look as strong as it has in the past couple of years. Taylor, who do you have as defensive MVP?
I've got Jordan Harris. Jordan Harris has stepped into a huge role in that middle linebacker position. The JUCO transfer is just getting started after his redshirt year, and he's really come into his own. He's the 2nd leading tackler on the team with 21 tackles. 12 of those are solo, and then he's got 1.5 tackles for loss. He's really been all over the field, and that's a huge spot to fill. Iowa State is known for making a lot of good linebackers. They didn't have that last year. They had one of the worst defenses in the nation. This year, they've stepped up, and Jordan Harris has been a huge part of that.
Yeah, and in the past couple of years, or before last season, we saw a slew of linebackers. We saw Jeremiah George, A.J. Klein, and Jake Knott. Thank you. So, it's definitely huge seeing that linebacker role filled. Hawn, who do you have?
I love how both of you guys brought up. We have Dale Pearson, right end, making a lot of big plays. Kamari Cotton-Moya, obviously their safety, making big plays. And Jordan Harris, he's a real heavy hitter, clogging up that run, the running lanes and everything. But here, I'm going to give my defense MVP to JUCO transfer out of Copia Lincoln Community College, Desmond Tucker. If you haven't heard of this guy,
Tucker.
I'm sorry, Demond
It's all
Tucker.
right.
Demond Tucker, he's an animal. He's a huge guy, big frame. What I like about him is he's not getting the stats that you see Harris getting. He doesn't get the tackles. He doesn't get the tackles as Moy. He doesn't get the sacks. But what he's doing is he's pushing back the offensive line. He's doing something that we haven't seen the defensive front seven do. It's not Iowa State's kind of defensive identity.
Yeah.
But with that, how do you pronounce it? I'm sorry.
Demond Tucker.
Demond Tucker, as you said. What he's doing, he's pushing back the offensive line and is doing two things. It's collapsing the pocket for the quarterback, giving him, less of a, just comfortability there, so he can't make the throws, helping out the secondary. But also, he's pushing back the line, clogging up running lanes, making holes harder for running backs to hit. And like you said, we don't have the greatest run defense.
Yes.
But what he's doing is he's just kind of mixing it up, making it uncomfortable for offenses to kind of get in that rhythm.
And you're absolutely right there, Hawn, because if you don't have Demond Tucker on that defensive front, Dale Pearson is nothing. Nothing on this team. He comes around on a little spin move or on a hook in after Demond Tucker just demolishes the center and usually one guard in addition to that on the middle. He's just a huge force at that nose guard position, and that allows a bunch of different people. Jannar Jones early, Dale Pearson early coming in for those sacks to clean up.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what you said about Dale Pearson and Demond Tucker, when you're saying intangibles, Demond Tucker, the one interception that Pearson has is because he broke through that line in the UNI game, and Pearson read the screen and picked it off. So I totally agree about Demond Tucker. That dude's a force, and the health is the only question with him. So I think he'll be a big part for Iowa State going forward this season. So what's the biggest surprise for you guys this year? Who's a player that stepped up and you didn't really expect to be the big playmaker? We'll start with Hawn this time.
You asked me the biggest surprise. I took it as, a surprise anywhere on the field, positive or negative. A surprise for me is how our kicking team, especially Colton Madden, it just isn't kind of producing as he did last year. The unit just isn't as tight. This year he's 5 for 8. And last year he started his season 7 for 7 and ended 11 for 14, which is very respectable for a kicker, especially in the college game.
Yeah.
But from 30 to 39 yards out last year, Ned only missed 1 field goal.
Yeah.
This year he's missed 2, and we're talking about one of the most crucial field goals he's had in his career, losing to Toledo.
Yeah.
Maybe not outright, but forcing overtime, which we lost. It's just something that Ned, we talked about him last year. It was a real strength for Iowa State, nailing our field goals and having that confidence that we might not score touchdowns, but we'll get on the board if Netten just secures our points.
Yeah.
But this year it's not looking that way, so this offense has to step up. That's a surprise for me.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And we saw him hit that big field goal against Iowa last year, and he's just not making those clutch kicks like he did last year. Taylor, who do you have as your biggest surprise?
I've got. I went with the whole defensive side. The defense has stepped up for Iowa State.
Absolutely.
The offense has not been there for the Cyclones, but the defense has stepped up in their place. I'm going to use a stat that my man Joey Mullins pulled up for the Clone Zone, KURE, on Thursdays from 5 to 7.
I like the tag.
But he found that Iowa State's defense is actually 25th nationally in all-purpose yards.
Wow.
They're 25th in the nation in all-purpose. This defense has stepped up huge. They were going into the season on my list, number 1 right at the top is the biggest potential problem for this team. The defense last year for Iowa State was subpar, to say the least. And this year they have stepped up. They have kept they've kept all the games in the reach of the offense. It's the offense that hasn't gotten it done. The defense keeps them right in striking range throughout the entire game. They've played full games, and it's been phenomenal.
I absolutely agree, and I didn't even think about putting that down. Otherwise, I would have had the defense on mine as well. We had a defense last year that ranked in, I think they were like the bottom 10 in rushing defense, and it seems like at any time the defense would give up a big play or a third and long. It seemed like every third and long we were giving up first downs. For my biggest surprise, I have Trevor Ryan, who I think a lot of other people would have on their biggest surprise. I followed the guy since I covered the spring game, and in the spring game, I think he had over 100 yards receiving and a couple touchdowns. And coming into the season, I wasn't sure if he was going to play a big role, if he was even going to play. And punt return opening week, a rushing touchdown. He's still growing, and I mean, he's just a walk-on. He's earned himself a scholarship.
Yeah.
Big
Very good
surprise.
story, by the
And
way.
I think that's something we needed is just a big playmaker who can, break open a big play at any time after the absence of, the graduation of E.J. Bibbs and Jarvis West.
Sure.
So I think we
Sure.
needed a big playmaker like that, and I think we'll see him step up heading into Big 12 play.
Absolutely. I mean, he's leading right now for the Cyclones in all-purpose yards with 270, so he's had a huge season for a walk-on.
Yeah, great stat there. So let's jump into Big 12 play. We have Iowa State taking on the bottom feeder of the Big 12 this weekend, Kansas. And, the big question I got to start out with here is this an absolute must-win for Paul Rhodes? I mean, is he gone after the season if he loses to Kansas?
Well, I don't feel comfortable answering that question, but I do feel comfortable in saying that this is a must-win for Paul Rhodes. I mean,
Yep.
if you lose to Kansas in Jack Trice Stadium to start off this season 1-4, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. This year, I mean, you had a chance. The only chance you were given going into the season was to win in any of your first 5 games. And if you lose
Yeah.
four out of those 5 games, which is looking possible, it would, I would say, tentatively, it would be the seemingly end of Paul Rhodes' era.
Yeah, and I hate to say that, even bring it up, but I mean, I agree. It's an absolute must-win. He's had no marquee wins in the past couple of years, except for maybe Iowa you could throw on there, and a loss to Kansas last year. I think this is a game we have to win. And I mean, Kansas has looked dreadful. I mean, they lost to a Rutgers team last week who's missing half their team to either injury or they got kicked off. So
Yeah. I mean, they lost to an FCS team. Who does that?
Yeah.
Right? Just who does that? I'm
Yeah.
kidding. Yeah.
So much room to talk.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to say it is a definite win, a must-win for Paul Rhodes, and not only Paul Rhodes, but for this Cyclone team that, heavily rides on momentum. I
Right.
feel like the Cyclones are a passionate team. They love to play. It's just, they get hit with losses, they get hit with injuries, and it just kind of brings them down a little bit. This game it might be a definitive point in the season, whether Iowa State's on an uprise or, a steep drop losing to Kansas, like you said, losing to FCS team, was it South Dakota State?
Yeah, South Dakota
South
State.
Dakota State, losing to a brutal home loss. I think it was 40 points to Memphis, and just a mediocre Rutgers team, like you said, injuries and everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just losing to the Rutgers, it's a must-win for Paul Rhodes and this team.
Yeah. And let's see. So what are the keys to us, winning this game? If it is a must-win, and it's a game I think we're favored like 15 points in, something like that. So what are the keys to us pulling off that easy victory? We'll start with you, Hawn, this time.
Yeah, I think it's easy. We saw that this Iowa State offense, they're not producing as much as the hype that we, as Cyclone fans have brought into this season. They're not living up to it. So this defense, they really have to have a nose for the ball. No more forced fumbles that we don't recover.
Yep.
No more interceptions that go through our hands. Missed tackles or sacks. Just having a nose for the ball and seeing that this defense can get our offense into better field position. Like we said in that Toledo game, they had way better field position, although we beat them in offensive yards, time of possession. Them having that field position really changed the pace of the game and change the outcome.
Yep.
So what this defense has to do is, band together like Alan, our old InCYders host.
Shout out to Alan
if you're
Fidocchi.
watching. Like you said, this defense, bend, don't break, is what you got to do. Just get physical with them and instill that this defense isn't something to mess with anymore. We have a potential to establish physicality at the beginning. If that happens, find a nose for the ball, get turnovers, get Iowa State offense, room to go to work, give them some good field position to score some points. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also have the defense being one of the keys in this game. I mean, last time I checked, both Kansas's starting and backup quarterback are questionable going into this game.
Yep.
And I think it's a no-brainer. You got to stop the run. And the running back, I don't have no idea how to say this guy's name, Hawn Kenner, something like that.
Nailed
Whatever
it.
his name is, he's
Nailed
been
it.
the only guy scoring touchdowns for Kansas. He's rushed for 5 of the team's total 8 TDs. And, with no passing game, KU doesn't have a choice but to run the ball.
Yeah, and a huge note off of that. Rutgers, a lowly Rutgers, held Kansas to 22 yards on the ground last game. 22 yards. A running Kansas team was held to 22 yards. This is a rough Kansas year for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing I have on here, like you said, just taking advantage of opportunities. I think Iowa State needs to be aggressive but play smart. You know, the loss to Toledo had a lot to do with misfortune, missing field goal, penalties, fumbles, whatever. You know, I think Iowa State has the firepower to break this game open, and I think when they do that, they just need to step on the neck. They just need to, you know, give the fans something to be excited about. If they want to make this a momentum game, I think they just really need to break it open and score points. Did you have anything else to add, Taylor?
Well, just kind of going off of it, you guys both pointed out potential. The potential of this team's offense is high. They have not gotten close to it thus far this year. But the fact is, they just need to open the gates and let the offense flow. It's hard. It's obviously easier said than done. They haven't been able to do it thus far this year. Against this Kansas team, if they can't do it, they're never going to get it done. This team will never get the offense moving if they can't do it against this Kansas team. This Kansas defense is, I'm going to say, it's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible defense. If Iowa State cannot get it done in this game, scrap the season. They're not getting it done with the offense. They should put up huge points on the Jayhawks. I'm talking 60 points here, 67 points. That's what I said earlier in the day. They should put up 67 points. I don't know why 67, but 67 points they should put on these Jayhawks. And the defense, they just need to kind of continue what they're doing. It doesn't matter if they give up a little more on the ground, because this offense should obliterate the Jayhawks this weekend.
You know what? 67 is my favorite number. So going into that,
There you go.
so we have Taylor's prediction for the game. Hawn, who do you have winning this game, and what do you have for the score?
I have Iowa State. I really do believe that Iowa State can come together. Their offense should figure it out. You know, against this Kansas team who they've proved themselves that they're bottom of the Big 12.
Yeah.
You know, we look at Kansas and we love it on our schedule, but if Iowa State, like Taylor said, they need to figure it out. I'm going to go 28-17 Iowa State.
28-17. Wow,
Yeah,
so a little
they're
bit
still
closer
figuring
than,
it out, but
okay.
28's respectable.
You know, heading into the season, I thought Iowa State actually had the potential. I wasn't going to guarantee they were going to start 5-0, but I mean, the first 5 games of their season were winnable games.
They're the only winnable games on the schedule.
If you look at it though, we're 1-2. Take 3 minutes out of these games, we're 3-0.
Yeah.
The last 2 minutes of the Iowa game, we lost it 2 minutes.
Yeah.
The last 3 seconds of the Toledo game, we lost
exactly.
it. Take away 2 minutes and 30 seconds of our season, we're 3-0. Fix the 2 minutes and 30 seconds of this season, we're 3-0.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And
It's just that easy, folks.
And I thought Texas Tech would be a more winnable game, but after, I mean, seeing how they played against TCU, and almost, I mean, they should have pulled off that upset.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know if that's necessarily a winnable game. But my prediction, I like KU's coach. I feel bad for him. I like the enthusiasm he's bringing to that program. I'm going to take the Cyclones 37-17. And one more thing, if we lose this game, do we bring in Joel Lanning? Is it time to bring him in and get him snaps? No. You don't think so?
He's not ready. He looks good. He's not ready. Sam Richardson, 5-year senior. Rhodes has been all over him. Keep him in.
I definitely agree. Iowa State's invested a lot into Richardson, just on how much first-team offense snaps he's getting just all summer, and just starting these games. Like you said, 5th-year senior, we're not going away from Richardson. They just need to figure it out.
All right, well, that's a good stopping point. We're going to take a quick break, guys. We'll be right back after the break, and we have a package to show you.
Package, if they're not.
All right, well, we're back.
We're back.
So, yeah, we're back. We made it back. All right, looking ahead for football, what needs to change for ISU to pick up some Big 12 wins, or is it time to look ahead to basketball season already?
Well, as for looking forward, I think the farthest you can look forward is Kansas and possibly Texas in Big 12 wins. Everybody else in the conference is too good. They're too good for this Iowa State team. Obviously, Paul Rhodes in his past has had times where he's gone out and won big games. I don't know if this is the year. He needs one of those games if he hopes to stick around for a while. But I don't know. The farthest I think I'll be looking is Kansas this weekend, and maybe the Texas game is possible wins.
Yeah, and I mean, I have that on my next talking point. I also think Texas, I mean, aside from Kansas, I think Texas is their next best chance of winning a game. I mean, it's homecoming for us. We've lost 2 games to them in the past 2 years on last-second plays. So, I think that's our best chance. It's homecoming, it's Halloween, all those things. What do you think, Hawn? What do you think needs to change?
Changing things, the ability to rush the quarterback without blitzing. I think Iowa State just needs to find, like with
Just
Dale
different-
Pearson,
yeah.
Tucker. Like we said, they need to get to the quarterback without the help of the linebackers because like we're talking in the Big 12, they have fast-paced offenses. They have big threats downfield, pass catchers, galore in the Big 12. And so what Iowa State needs to do is either rush the quarterback more, which we've proven we can't blitz as well because we just get burnt, or find the ability to rush without more than 4 down,
Right.
and putting back 5 DBs. We're talking
Just-
Cotton Moya, Sam E. Richardson. Our corners and our D-backs, they just need to stand their grounds and let the front 4 create.
Yeah.
That's create.
Yeah, and they've looked stronger this year. They've looked better, and I totally agree. I think just different schemes would definitely help on the defensive end. The one thing I have to add is, quite obviously, the offense. The offense needs to step it up. I think the O-line may be the biggest issue we have. Quite obviously, Richardson just doesn't have enough time back there. The holes for the running backs aren't big enough, and we can't keep up with Big 12 offenses if we're not scoring points.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So we'll step aside from Iowa State football and just look at college football in general this year. Who do you guys have in your current college football playoff? We'll start with Hawn.
Looking at the rankings, I don't have anyone coming out of the top 25 going in. So let's just start top to bottom. I think Ole Miss is one of the scariest offenses that college ball has right now because of their big play opportunity. If you look at passes downfield, they're averaging, with their 2 top receivers, 21 and 23 yards per catch. And that's downfield passing. That's downfield offense that you love to see. So I have Ole Miss going.
All right.
Georgia, I feel like they have one of the best defenses in the country. Taylor doesn't agree with me here, but an SEC defense that shuts down offenses at around 14 points a game, that's a defense that I want to see in these playoffs.
Okay.
UCLA, a really balanced offense. One of the most balanced offenses in the country. They love to run, and running it opens up play action. And they have Rosen at quarterback. He's doing a really good job with that offense. And a team that a lot of people don't really see, but I see Utah.
Yep.
They're a really scrappy team, and they're non-stop fight. You don't see Utah blowing out teams, but you see them keeping up and just winning. In fourth quarter, winning.
Yep.
By all means necessary. Relentlessness is what I'm trying to say. They're relentless, and they don't let up.
Yeah, and with my top 4, the only SEC team I have in mind is LSU. And
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
LSU.
And I would have had Ole Miss, but I think when it comes to the end of the season, that LSU game comes up, I think the winner of that goes is who I have in mind.
I agree, but I think it's Ole Miss.
All right.
So I agree.
And then my other teams I have are Michigan State. And, again, it's a toss-up. I think it's either them or Ohio State.
Yes.
So, quite obviously, we can maybe throw Purdue in there. No, but
The Boilermakers.
But the other teams I have are TCU out of the Big 12.
Yep.
It's either them or Baylor, quite obviously, too. I think the Big 12 is undefeated pretty much top to bottom besides 3 teams. But TCU, I think, is the best team out of there. And then my wild card 4 team, I also have UCLA and Utah, actually. I like
All
Utah.
right.
They're scrappy, and I think UCLA, if they can win out the Pac-12, I think they have a good shot of making it. Taylor, who do you have in yours?
You guys must have really liked that Utah-Oregon game. I'll tell you
It was
what.
a fun game to watch,
Yes.
let me tell you.
I've
I've got Ole Miss. Ole Miss is for sure. They're very talented team. Very
Yep.
talented team. Past that, I've got Ohio State is going to win the Big Ten.
Okay.
Let's be serious. Let's be serious. Then I've got TCU. I think they're still the most talented team in the Big 12. And there's no way if a Big 12 team this year goes undefeated, they're not getting in. After all the controversy last year, there's no way that selection committee would not put a Big 12 team in. And then for the 4th, I'll do a cop-out like you, Logan. I'll give you 2 teams. I've got either Notre Dame, who's been playing extraordinary ball, even without their starting quarterback, and or LSU.
Yes.
2 SEC teams could make this.
Yeah, and I would have had Notre Dame in mind. I just think the Clemson game and the USC game are the only question marks on their schedule that kept them out of mind. So let's go on. Who do you guys have as your Heisman winner this year? I think the consensus right now is Leonard Fournette.
The rebirth of AP.
Rebirth of AP whatever you want to call the guy.
Rebirth.
Are we all in consensus? I mean, that Auburn performance was unreal.
Just the way a running back fights for extra yards is one of the most fun things I love to watch about football in general, whether it be NFL or NCAA. And this guy produces that. He could hurdle people. He could spin. He could just truck people. You see that in a running back, and it's game over. This guy.
Yeah, he's got all the tools. I mean, he's strong. He's fast. I mean, I remember watching his tape when he was heading into college. I think he was the top running back, or maybe even top recruit overall heading into college. And I mean, the dude just broke open plays. He looked like he does now in high school.
It's huge, absolutely huge. 8.6 yards per carry, 631 yards this season on 73 attempts, and 8 touchdowns. It's unmatched by any other player in the NCAA.
Absolutely. So we're going to do one more thing before we close out our show. If it is time for basketball season to look ahead to that, we'll do a quick preview. And we'll just, already. I mean, how can you not love Iowa State basketball? Yeah, exactly. So what do you guys think about Iowa State's newcomers heading into this year, and what do you think they can provide to this year's team? We'll start with Taylor. We have 3 players that I noted who I think will be the main players that will actually get playing time. Deontay Burton, Hallis Cook, and Simeon Carter.
Okay. Start off with Burton. Burton is just a high-energy guy.
Yep.
He reminds me a lot of maybe a Kenneth Fareed from the NBA.
Yeah, I like that comparison.
And he's just gets up. I mean, I watched him in Cap City this summer. Absolutely phenomenal athlete. He really, if he can form into a shooter, I think he'll be a deadly, deadly man in the Big 12. However, I have seen some variable in his shooting ability. So I think he'll be a big player for the Cyclones. I don't think he'll be a big scorer. I think he'll be that energy guy who comes into the game. Maybe if Iowa State is on a little down slope of the game, he comes in, brings the energy, brings Iowa State back into the momentum.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I think with the graduation of Dustin Hogue, I think he'll definitely step up and be that energy player.
For
and
sure.
I totally agree again with what you said about his jumping ability and everything. I saw him on campus the other day. I'm like, that dude is huge. And I mean, I've seen some of his YouTube dunks and I mean windmills. There was a play when he was at Marquette where he just transferred from. I mean, they're playing scrub team. I think it was like Fordham or something like that. But I mean, he just jammed on the dude. I mean, SportsCenter top 10 quality stuff. I think he's going to be a big time player. And I agree. I think the only thing is his shooting. He does have a little dribble step back and some moves in there, so I think he'll be effective in that way. But I think he'll be kind of an Abdel Nader style. He'll drive to the basket and get most of his points in that way. Hawn, what do you think about him?
Well, like you said, you stood next to him on campus earlier. He's like a linebacker, playing a guard position. He's just big. He's big, and I love Dustin Hogue last year. He provided a lot for the Cyclones, but what he really provided was rebounding and letting McKay and Niang, maybe not all the time, but letting them both kind of leak out the fast break opportunities. That's something Burton could definitely do because he's a guard. He could take it up himself. And with his frame and his size and his jumping ability, he can get those rebounds and score inside. What I really love for him is a change of pace. Resting up Naz Long, Matt Thomas. But when I say change of pace, he's definitely a different player that we love on this basketball team.
Absolutely. And then the other 2 players, Hallis Cook and Simeon Carter. I'll start with Hallis Cook. I mean, pure shooter out of Oregon State, and I mean, he's just that. He's kind of a Naz Long style. He has good driving ability too. My only thing with him is the rust. He's been away. He had was a double hip surgery, something like that. That's tough to come back from. He hasn't played in an actual game, I think, in a year or 2 now.
No.
So I think that's the biggest concern with him. And the other thing I noticed when he was at Oregon State is he had a tendency to kind of shy away sometimes. He could be a big-time scorer and hit big shots, but he could shy away at times and kind of disappear on the court. Hawn, what do you think about him?
Yeah, I definitely feel like these 2 are just going to be, rest players as well as simply breathers for, the Naz Long, the Matt Thomas coming off the bench. Hallis Cook, you said he could score, he can shoot the ball. And Simeon Carter, just coming from McKay, he gets in a lot of foul trouble. And with Niang, if he can't necessarily guard the dominant big man that we see in the Big 12 and, that we see just against all of our opponents, Simeon Carter, he'll definitely provide, a lot of rest for those 2 specific.
Yeah, and I love having Simeon Carter on our team. Sorry, I'll let you finish about Hallis Cook before I cut you off.
But just my short note on Carter. Carter's going to be a great rest guy, like you said, Hawn. But more about Cook. Cook, I've looked at some of his tape, and he's a very big defensive presence. Of past Cyclones, at least in recent history, that he reminds me of most, Chris Babb.
Okay,
a dead eye from 3 and an absolute shutdown defender. Babb now trying out for the Warriors. Hopefully he makes it out there. But I think he reminds me a lot of Babb. And I actually tweeted that this summer, and Babb tweeted back at me, and he's like, you know I outshoot him, though. But anyways, they're both dead eyes, and if, like you said, Logan, if Cook can come back from that, a lot of surgery over the past year, if he can come back from that in the same form he had at Oregon State, he'll be a huge part of the team.
Yeah, and then the last thing I had to say about Simeon Carter, I mean, the dude's long, and he's big, wide shoulders. His highlight tape that I watched earlier, just, snagging rebounds, a lot of putbacks, and I like that Prohm brought him here. I mean, he's going to offer a lot of length on our defense, I think, which is what we've needed in past years, to compete with teams like Texas and Baylor that are always big and long. But yeah, I like him on our team.
Yeah, it'll be intriguing to see what Prohm wants to do with these reserve guys, because as we know, Hoiberg, he really loved his core 7.
Yeah.
They played a huge majority of these minutes. We didn't see a lot of reserves come off the bench. So it's really exciting to see if Burton, Cook, and Carter really can come off this bench and put in the minutes, probably more mid to late season than early, but put in the minutes to kind of change up this team.
Yep. And we'll see how those guys get their minutes going into the season. Naslong also coming off surgery, so we could see Cook get some more of those minutes.
Oh, I believe he will, yeah.
But that's all we have for tonight's show. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week, Thursday, same time.
Iowa State traveled to Norman, Oklahoma for their first Big 12 road test. Iowa State was coming off a 3-set win at home against Texas Tech. Oklahoma was coming off a loss on the road to that same Texas Tech team in 5 sets.
Howard McCaslin Fieldhouse plays host to this Big 12 showdown. The first set is back and forth between the Cyclones and the Sooners, and Oklahoma comes out with a little bit more home field advantage, giving them the first set 30-28.
We knew we'd have to gut it out. We knew they'd be up and down, and yeah, we just kind of had to get adjusted, get settled in. But once we started being aggressive, that really helped us. And even though we lost that game, it was still huge for us just to have that fight and get that momentum.
Momentum is continued for the Cyclones. It starts out with defense turning into offense, and Alexis Conaway coming alive. The Cyclones, with the lead from Conaway, take the second 25-23.
First game, I mean, nothing was really falling, and so I just had to keep being aggressive. It's easy to kind of back down and get timid, but just over the years I've learned that you just have to push through it. You're not going to get kills all the time, and OU had great defense, but yeah, just keep working through it.
They keep on working into the third as Conaway continues her great play. Added on top of that is fellow Cyclone Morgan Kurt, shining in a different role, helping the Cyclones take the third 25-19.
Usually lately I've just been playing right back and stuff, and tonight I went in the front row, and I mean, just any way, I feel like every year my role has changed, but any way that I can just get in there and help my team out, whatever they need me to do, I'll do it. So.
The fourth set is all Cyclones early, with big plays from Conaway and Kurt. But late, Oklahoma starts to inch their way back in. But in the end, it's Jess Shaben ending this game, the freshman, with a kill in the fourth. It's all Cardinal and gold, 25-23.
I think it's huge, especially getting a game on the road. It's hard to win. Teams always play their best at home. So to be able to win our first home game and then win a game on the road just will really help our confidence as we go into the season.
Iowa State pulled this one off in 4 sets. They will be back on the court in Austin this Saturday against the Texas Longhorns. For Cyclones.tv, I'm Taylor.